Good morning. Happy Monday. I tell you, technical difficulties. No, when the system updates, it really puts me behind. But that's okay. I'm here. Happy Monday to you. I didn't come on last Monday because I was actually taking a break and dealing with family and enjoying and out of town and enjoying my family. So I wanted to take out that time to do that. So welcome to Mondays with Coach Rice, where we dive deep into topics that matters most to your mental health and well-being. I am your host, Coach Rice, your professional certified life and health coach and trained mental health counselor. Today we are exploring a topic that many of us can relate to but don't often talk about, and that's resentment. So I'll be talking about what is it, why does it matter, and how it can affect our lives. I had to deal with something like this not too long ago, and as the Holy Spirit led me into walking through it, I was able to see and be very encouraged by the fact that God revealed Himself to me in that area, but He also showed me something key, which was how do we, what He really take a deep dive into what it is, and also how we can overcome it if we're in it. But the main thing is not to get to that point, and that's what I want to talk about today, because resentment is very detrimental to your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. So that's why it's important that I really want to talk about it today, because that's what I'm here for, is to shed light on some stuff when I get it, because it's so helpful to others. It was helpful to me, and it's also helpful to others. So let me dive into it. And so I'm going to first define resentment, because resentment is a complex emotion that arises from feeling wronged or mistreated. Most of the time it starts with an offense. It's a mixture of anger, frustration, and bitterness. It can turn into bitterness, and then bitterness to unforgiveness. But I want to make sure that you understand the pathways that go into resentment, so you won't actually go that far like I did. But anyway, I was reading a commentary in the Bible, and it talks, as I was really researching, like, what does the Bible say and how to deal with it when I was actually in the influx of it. And what it was showing, what the commentary said was so key, was that it's a slow burning anger that consumes the soul. That's like a very good example of what it is and what it does, because I kid you not, when I tell you it's not helpful to your mental, physical, and emotional well-being, I mean it, because I felt it. So coming out of it feels so good, and I'm so grateful to God that He showed me this. So let me tell you what really causes, the root cause to resentment is, number one, people usually feel resentful when they've been cheated on, stolen from, or lied to. That's a big one right there. Number two, unmet expectations or perceived injustices or unresolved conflicts. That's another one. Number three, disagreeing over someone else's behavior or actions. When we disagree with it, sometimes it can cause us to be resentful. Jealousy of another person. That's number four. Jealousy of another person causes us to resent them because we want what they have. Rejection is number five. And favoritism can cause resentment, because to the less favored person. That's, to me, that's when I think of favoritism, I always think of a form of bullying. Number seven. Favoritism is number six. Number seven is we often react to an insult or an offense or a weakness that's been exposed. Sometimes we can cause us to be resentful. And also resentment can be directed to, just to let you know, it can be directed to an action, a statement, or a person or authority figure, a parent, a best friend, or even a spouse. I think in the commentary I read also showed me it's the cheapest, the way they worded it, resentment is the cheapest and least legitimate form of anger. It's an emotion that has no strength. And so when we're dealing with resentment, we want to make sure that we understand that it's not for the other person to get free. It's for you to get free. So when we're dealing with resentment, it's to help us. But it also can help the other person if they're open to and receptive to the dialogue. And so why does it really matter when we talk about this, right? Resentment, when you have been treated unfair or you see injustice, that's a legitimate, it is legitimate to recognize the unfair treatment and injustice. And you can even do something about it, but it's not helpful if you wallow in your feelings of anger, because that's the beginning steps that leads to the pathway of resentment. So I'm gonna talk about it in what I went through, because I watched the steps and God has showed me the steps. And so when I was dealing with it and he was dealing with me, after I realized I was in the mode of resentment, he was showing me the pathway that got me there. And it made a lot of sense. So resentment is clinging to and feeding those hurt feelings until they dominate our lives. That's what it was doing to me. It was dominating my life. And it really wasn't helpful at all to me. And it was very detrimental to my health. And so it didn't really get my attention until it hit the mental health part of it. It went from emotional to physical. Then it could have been going all at the same time, but I noticed the alert came when it hit my mental state, because I started to, it was really draining. And so the pathway starts with an offense. So when someone may offend you in whatever way they do, what happens is, if we don't address it right then and there or address it quickly, what happens is we start to feel angry. And when anger set in, that's the first beginning pathway that leads to resentment. You're not at that level yet. Some people may run from it. It seems as if you went from the offense to resentment, but it don't happen that way. It's actually a process. And so when you offended and you don't say anything, and some people say, I'm just going to let it go. That's a big, huge word that people use all the time. I'm just going to let it go. You're really not letting it go. You're tucking it under the carpet and eventually going to trip over it. Because what happens is you start to, in that anger, because under the secondary emotion is anger, but the primary emotion is really hurt. And so a lot of times or disappointment or whatever, it can be it's really another primary emotion that really need to be addressed. And so what happens is we use the anger, because the anger is a barrier to protect ourselves and say, hey, no, I'm gearing up to protect myself. And always think about when the Bible talks about, in Matthew 18:15, it talks about how to deal with offenses. If a brother sins against me, I'm to go and talk about that to them between me and that person alone, because if he listens, then I gained a brother. That's how the scriptures kind of formulated. But what happens is, when you in real life situation, it happens the same way. It's no different. The Bible is really true at what it say. So what happens is, if I'm in anger, I'm not gonna go to my brother or whoever offended me, or my spouse, my friend. I'm not gonna go to them, or even God. Sometimes we have resentment toward God. I'm not gonna go there, because what happens is I'm so angry, and I put a barrier up that it causes me to start to create anxiety, because I'm still sitting with the emotions. And so what happens is those emotions start to affect my physical health. And so now I have anxiety. I got to get some type of release. This is what happens when we're in this pathway. The next pathway that keeps that leads to resentment is not going to the person. That's one. First, anger. Not going to the person who offended you is the second thing. The third thing is the anxiety that we experience. We have to release it somehow. So what we do in our memory bank, in our unconscious memory bank, what we do is we think about a person we can talk to that been through that, and we go to them, and because we really looking for someone to side with the anger. So we may go to a toxic individual that has not resolved it correctly. So that's what I was doing when I was in the midst of it. But what I didn't understand was I was causing that person that I was going to sin, because they couldn't handle what I was giving them. But also, I was actually not talking to the person. So the person I needed to talk to. That's in the mental health field, we call that triangulation, where you got two people in conflict. We bring in a third person, and that third person can be helpful or it can be detrimental. And so most of the time we pick the person that's not too, that's full of their emotions and their opinions, and they actually add to the fuel to the fire. They put actually, a lighter fluid on flame. And so what happens is we start to gain a faulty narrative of what really happened. We start to, things are added, anger is fueled, and it's not helpful. Most of the time when you have a triangulation, a healthy triangulation is to either triangulate God, a counselor that can help, or either a sister or brother in Christ that really can give you biblical foundation principles to help you get out of it. But most of the time we go to another person, and another person who's very opinionated and may not be at that level of dealing with that. And so what happens is it's always let's seek revenge or unhealthy conflict, because this is what you're just trying to relieve anxiety. And so we triangulate this person. And then the next step is this faulty narrative. We tell ourselves a whole different story, and it's more heightened than it should be. And so we start to get in defense mode. And now we're ready to just either exit the relationship or do something revengeful. But now that's when you in you at the level of resentment, because what happens is your conversation, it weeds through the other relationships in your life. So the conversation that you're in is a very negative conversation with everybody you come around, but it's negative toward woe is me. Oh, look what happened to me. Oh, look, you're a victim now. You're not in victorious mode. You're a victim. So what happens is you have this resentment that's causing all kind of havoc in your life. I kid you not. Your emotional state is negative. Your thoughts are negative. And so it really causes so much. So I'm gonna go into that, how it affects our lives. It's so important, because that's why it's resentment. You have to get free of that, because if you do not get free, it affects your emotional, physical, and your mental health. And that's what happened to me. I allowed that. I had a whole faulty narrative until I got the Holy Spirit revealed to me, you at the level of resentment. The next step would have been bitterness, and I do not want to get into that part, but I'm just talking about resentment for now. When I was in that state of resentment, the emotional impact that it had on me, I'm gonna tell you, I started to deal with a lot of stress and anxiety, and I was stuck in this negative cycle of negative thinking, like, how could this person do this to me? Because I should have, number one, I should have communicated what I felt at that moment, and I didn't. That's why I failed. Number one, I did not communicate. When people say speak your truth, that is a true statement. You need to express your emotions. I was suppressing them. And while I was suppressing my emotions, I was festering up anger, frustration, and it was really starting to cause a lot of stress and anxiety. And you know what stress does to the body. Now it's affecting my physical health. So when you're dealing with when you're holding on to resentment, the health issues that come with that are not good. I'm just thankful I didn't get high blood pressure or heart disease, but it definitely weakened I had experienced weakened immune system. I have experienced extreme inflammation, and usually those things contribute to autoimmune disease. I thank God I did not get to that point. But a lot of times resentment, bitterness, and unforgiveness lead to those type of health issues. So sometimes your health issues can be rooted in some groundwork you need to do around resentment and resentment, bitterness, and unforgiveness. You might want to check those things out because it can definitely contribute to health issues like that. And it really impinges upon your mental health. And when your mental health is compromised, and when I say that, I mean like your state of negative, the way you start to go within yourself, you start to pretty much self-destruct because you like, I shouldn't have let this happen. You start using language like I shouldn't have never let this happen. I would never do this again. You start making unhealthy pacts with yourself, and it starts to impinge upon your relationships that you have. So when you're in resentment mode, you start to you move away from trust and intimacy with other relationships around you because of what happened in one incident. One incident caused so much if it's not addressed at the beginning. When it's addressed at the beginning, you can stop it right there and you don't have to move to resentment. And so that's what I didn't do. I should have expressed myself in the beginning. And then I wouldn't have never went to the next step. I would have been able to release that anxiety or anger that I was dealing with, because most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, it's not the story that you really got from the incident. It's actually, the story could be very different, or it could be the same. It's not, a lot of times it's the same. It's like, oh, that person didn't really intend to do something like that, or that person may have been experiencing whatever they've experienced. It don't really have anything to do with the person. It's how we have to deal with it. If we can release our truth, it releases us from it. Number one, it helps us to be authentic in our emotions. It helps us to release those emotions. What they do with them, that's not important. It's the fact that we were able to express ourselves. Usually when you're able to express yourself, it do a lot of things. It sets boundaries. Because when you let someone know where you stand in a healthy way, instead of reacting, being emotion reactive, but actually your goal should be, I want them to get an understanding. I get an understanding, and we can walk away. Do we have to agree? No. But as long as you understand my truth and how I feel, I expressed it, that's a freedom of release that you can only experience if you ever dealt with it. And so you want to make sure that you deal with that, because what's going to happen is it's going to change the trajectory of your current relationships and your future relationships, and that's what you don't want. It totally distorts. When you're in resentment, it distorts your view of relationships that you are in. It distorts the view of your relationships that you have around you, and also your future relationships. And that's what you don't want. When you sitting in resentment and you have not resolved that particular conflict or resentment, when you go to the next relationship, you wonder why you picking the same person with the same attributes. Different face, same attributes, because you have not dealt with the resentment or the unresolved issues from the previous relationship. So it's really, when you really communicate your truth and really communicate when you were offended, that's how you feel, and there's nothing wrong with how you feel. You have to express it. When you do that, you actually open yourself up to be more creative in your own personal life, and it also gives you a chance to be assertive, and it also sets boundaries. It sets standards in your personal life that you stand for something. And so if it's healthy, it's really, your goal is, how can I get an understanding and get this person to understand me, versus winning. It's not about winning, because you can be I found myself when I was dealing with the resentment, there's a part that I played in it as well, so I had to deal with that. And so it really did give me a good growth spurt in my life, because I was like, wow, this is really serious and I have to pay attention to it. But I really wanted to share that with you guys, because you can stop at the beginning of when you're offended. You can stop it by approaching a person who offended you, not outside people. But if you have to triangulate to calm down, triangulate God by praying to him and asking him to help you talk about it and discuss it with that person, and open both of y'all hearts to receive what's there. Because relationships, we are meant to be relational, but we can allow the devil to come, allow the enemy, the devil, I call him the enemy of the devil, some people call him whatever, but we can allow that to come into our life and speak to us to separate us from people, because he wants to keep you isolated. Because when you isolated, he can really have his way with you, and that's when you get into suicide ideation or suicide. No, we want to make sure that we open these floodgates so we can enhance our relationship. Or sometimes you just have to remove yourself from the relationship because it's not healthy. But you get to make that decision. But make sure that you vet everything that you do, not for the person, but for yourself. This is all for you, because the person is sleeping well at night and you're not. They're living rent free in your head, and you not getting any benefits from it. So you get to choose what you want to do. And so one of the things that sometimes we ask ourselves, if you are dealing with that, and you say, what if I'm already in the midst of resentment? What do I do, right? I want you to think about how it's affecting you. That's number one, because that's important. If you don't feel anything from it, it's not even worth talking about. But if it's affecting you, you will definitely want to deal with it. And so I can't see how resentment not affects someone, unless you just cold-hearted. But that's really not it. It's just that you got this wall up, and that wall is not helpful, because it's not letting anyone in, and you do not get a chance to experience how beautiful relationships are. But there's nothing wrong with healthy conflict, and that's a lot of times we want to avoid conflict. We're not avoiding it. We just actually walking in levels of resentment. And so we want to make sure that we take care of that. You want to think about how it's affecting you, but you also want to think about, what am I willing to do to set myself free? Because it's really not about the other person. It's a decision that you get to choose. Do I want to continue to tuck it under the rug and trip over myself, or do I want to address this and get free? The freedom is amazing. I kid you not, it's amazing. And you get to learn a lot about yourself and that person through actually getting rid of the resentment. So a lot of times we have to think about, what are we going to do about it? So I would say this. I encourage you, if you are in the midst of resentment, I gave you the steps. If someone offended you, that's the first step. If you can have the communication, get rid of it, you don't have to fall into resentment. But if you are in the midst of resentment, and there's someone in your life that you have an alt with, or you have issues with, if you do not deal with that, I promise you it would deal with you. So when you're ready to deal with your resentment that you're already in, just give me a call. So you can experience the freedom that you need from the resentment. Give me a call. I'll walk you through, because each one is there. Each situation is different. But I just wanted to give you the general pathway to it and what it can do to the effects it have on you. If you're experiencing any of this, just give me a call. Set up an appointment on my calendar, which should be a link in this episode, so that you can get a chance to get free from it. So I thank you so much for taking out the time to listen to me. But I do want to remind you, August 6th through the 9th, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Actually it's 5:30, I think. well, it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Sorry. It's the Girl Power Summit. It's actually for everyone, not just women, but men also. It's actually an empowering event that's coming up and to inspire personal and professional growth. We have a lot of speakers that's going to come on. You could choose which ones you want to listen to, but it's going to be something that I think would be beneficial for everyone. It's free. Free. We like free. So the link is also in my podcast, and I really would love to see you there. But in order to attend, you must reserve your spot by clicking the link and reserving your spot. You can not just say I'm going. So I want you to actually take out the time to do that. I want to see you there. I can't wait. I will be speaking on one of the parts of the event on relationships. I just want you to remember, every successful person needs a life coach. So thank you for listening to Mondays with Coach Rice. If you have enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, or leave a review. Or please, if you know someone who's dealing with some topics that I'm talking about, please forward it to them. It can be very helpful. Also, be sure to be sure to let me know if you have any topics you want me to talk about on the show. I'm open to it. I love helping others, so it may be something that you may want me to talk about. Your name will not be mentioned. I just will talk about the subject to give you the help that you need, because that's what I am here for, to empower, encourage, and inspire. So until next time, take care of yourself and your relationships. Have a happy Monday. This is Coach Rice signing off to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.